Holy flippity flip flop flapping smokes, everyone! This just in, the powerhouse that is BRICS, that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This global superpower is set to double in size with them at the latest BRICS summit that's happening in South Africa. They've invited 6 new nations to join officially, and that is including Saudi Arabia and Iran. But on top of this, BRICS, and more specifically China, has sent a chilling warning to the West that they will completely dominate the world very, very soon. So everyone, you definitely need to wake up and pay attention right now, because the West is getting weaker, the BRICS nations are getting stronger, they're expanding, and the West is looking very, very weak and vulnerable. But everyone, what other nations were invited to join? How exactly will this work? And what date is BRICS set to dominate global GDP? Well, everyone, that's exactly what we're going to discuss in today's video. So let's not waste any time. Let's get straight into the news, the facts, and the data. Well, everyone, look at this. China urges bigger, stronger BRICS to rival G7. Now, for those of you that don't know who the G7 is or who's included in the G7, well, that's Canada, France, Japan, Germany, Italy, the UK, US, and European Union as well. So right now the G7 dominates the world GDP, and also they have the most biggest and strongest military might. But if these new 6 nations join BRICS, that could be about to change. So we're first going to cover this story, everyone, but there's an even bigger story I want to show you very, very soon. So China will push BRICS bloc of emerging markets to become a full-scale rival to the G7 this week, which they just did. I have the breaking news on this, but we need to discuss what's happening before this announcement so you can understand what's really going on. As leaders from across the developing world gather to debate the forum's biggest expansion in more than a decade. So this is going to be absolutely massive, everyone. So South Africa's president has invited more than 60 heads of state and government to a summit in Johannesburg from Wednesday, and when several other countries could be invited to join the bloc of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa, said several officials familiar with talks. Well, we just got that news, everyone, and there's more than 6 nations that are going to be joining. But in the run-up to the summit, New Delhi has clashed with Beijing over the expansion. Tensions were mounting over whether BRICS should be a non-aligned club for economic interests of developing countries, or a political force that openly challenges the West, said people briefed on the positions of India and China. So this is going to be very, very interesting, everyone, because right now China's relationship with the West and with the US is getting much, much worse, but India is set to benefit from that deteriorating relationship. So it's going to be very interesting to see if India goes along with BRICS, or if they choose to side with the West. If we expand BRICS to account for a similar portion of the world GDP as a G7, then our collective voice in the world will grow stronger, said one Chinese official who of course declined to be identified. Now, South Africa's foreign minister said this month it was extremely wrong to see a potential BRICS expansion as an anti-Western move. Well, I think we all know that's why they're doing it, everyone, but it's true. If they do expand, that's their business. Of course, the West is expanding. Nobody's calling out the West saying, if you're expanding, that's against the East, but we have to see how this plays out. But South Africa's president has expressed support for an expansion, saying more than 20 nations have formally applied to join. So this is absolutely huge, everyone. Not only have they extended official invitation to 6 nations, there's more than 20 nations applying to join right now. An expanded BRICS would represent a diverse group of nations which share a common desire to have a more balanced world order, or maybe a new world order. In a televised address to the nation on Sunday, Western capitals are likely to regard the possible additions of Iran, Belarus, and Venezuela as a move to embrace the allies of Russia and China. Now, of course, Putin couldn't show up to this summit because if he did, according to international law, there's a warrant out for his arrest. It would be required for them to arrest him on the spot. So, okay, that was the speculation, what was going to happen leading up to this summit, but we just got new breaking news about what's about to happen. And again, people, this is going to completely change the world order. So look at this, everyone. Emerging Economies Group BRICS invites 6 new members, including Saudi Arabia and Iran. This is going to be an absolute game changer, everyone, because Saudi Arabia, they've got the oil to sell to the BRICS nations. They could maybe even give them a discount right at the same time when the Western world is getting rid of oil, they're getting rid of coal, they're charging everyone through the roof for all this renewable energy, they're making, the fuel for the economy very, very expensive in the West, when we could see the BRICS nations have a lot of cheap energy, and if we get into a global conflict, that will benefit them massively. Not to mention Iran's military is expanding massively, so if they team up with Russia and China, this will be a big threat to the West. So listen to this. The BRICS alliance, which is composed of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is set to invite Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. And this was announced by South Africa's president on X Social, previously known as Twitter. And their membership would take effect from January 2024. So like I said, that's just who they've officially invited, but there's much more countries applying to join. So a combined 23 countries have formally applied for BRICS membership, including the 6 that the South African president said were hereby invited. Other major African players such as Nigeria and Ghana have expressed informal interest. Now, of course, China and Russia is loving this, and again, they're putting out a warning to the West. China's President Xi Jinping said Thursday that the expansion is a new starting point for BRICS cooperation. It will bring a new vigor to BRICS cooperation mechanism, further strengthening a force for world peace, they say, and development. I'm not sure about that. He said at a press briefing in comments officially translated by a summit interpreter. Now, Putin thanked Ramaphosa's unique diplomatic mastery as we negotiated all the positions, including when it comes to BRICS expansion, knowing that the talks proved to be challenging work, according to an official summit translation. And he did also hint that there will be further additions. Now, I know what you may be thinking, well, look, this is a lot of poor third world countries. They can't challenge the West. They aren't even close. Well, look at this new report. They're set to dominate global GDP very, very soon. The relevance of BRICS is demonstrated by the growing interest of other countries to join our group, said Brazilian leader. Now, BRICS is going up to 37% of world GDP in terms of its purchasing power and 46% in terms of world population. Now, I think the West's population is going to shrink. Their population could keep on growing, so that could become over 50%. BRICS will continue being open to new members as well. So if they grow, they could absolutely dominate global GDP by 2030. Now, India's Prime Minister said the expansion and modernization of BRICS is a message that all institutions in the world need to mold themselves according to changing times. Boy, oh boy, everyone, when there's change in the world, we all know what comes next. This is going to be very uncertain times. It's going to be very turbulent times, and I think we are going to see the conflict between the West and the BRICS nations escalate. Now, on top of this, the UAE welcomed the membership announcement. We respect the vision of BRICS leadership and appreciate the inclusion of the UAE as a member to this important group. We look forward to a continued commitment of cooperation for the prosperity, dignity, and benefit of all nations, people all around the world. Now, Mohammed Jamshidi, Deputy Chief of Staff for Political Affairs to the Iranian president, called the Tehran BRICS announcement a strategic victory for Iran's foreign policy in a post on X. So everyone, you're starting to see this isn't a small announcement. This is going to absolutely change everything. Now, this is going to cause currency cloud as well, and this will challenge the US dollar. And we all know what happens when, people tried to challenge the almighty US dollar, which is backed by the US military industrial complex. Good things don't happen. So policy analyst and senior researcher at South Africa Institute for International Affairs said on X that the prospective new members will not only increase the visibility of the BRICS bloc, but also provides an opportunity for coalition participants to trade one with another in local currencies. It's still unclear what will happen to the group dynamics, but clearly it brings a new space for trade with the global South. Much of the arguments in the communique reflected the collective voice on need for change on international institutions, especially international financial institutions like the World Bank, IMF, International Monetary Fund, and WTO, World Trade Organization, he said. Now, if there is a big shakeup with these global financial institutions, we may see more economic warfare, and this could cause to some financial economic crisis that could be interconnected with economic warfare as well. Remember, in 2021, the biggest fear Jerome Powell had for the markets was not, a deteriorating economy, was actually a financial attack or the financial system getting hacked. Imagine the stock market getting hacked somehow and all stocks in the West or the US, for example, were sold off in an instant. Think it couldn't happen? Well, it definitely could, people. BRICS nations have struck different tones on their relationship with the West. Commercial and diplomatic tensions have risen between China and the US, while Russia is under a spate of Western sanctions from its invasion of Ukraine. And guess what? If China keeps on pushing this expansion, we're going to see retaliation from the US as well. So the new BRICS membership bring their own challenges. Iran contends with the US sanctions over its nuclear program, while fresh clashes in Ethiopia have raised concerns over internal stability. Egypt has faced face economic pressures, and Argentina recently sharply devalued its national currency, the peso, and jacked up interest rates following the shock primary election win by far-right libertarian, and the UAE and Saudi Arabia are both actively pursuing growth in non-oil sectors, even as Riyadh faces ongoing Western criticism of its human rights record. So everyone, this is very, very worrying, and this is very, very concerning, and this should be very bad news in the long term for the US dollar. Obviously, it won't collapse overnight. Right now, it's performing very, very strong with all other currencies being devalued. But you're definitely going to want to protect yourself. And we did just get a new report that says gold is set to skyrocket. And it is just one easy way to protect yourself against the US losing its place as world reserve currency and as the biggest economy in the world. Because look at this. Investors say they'll stick with gold as Fed cycle nears end. So gold isn't losing its allure, according to a dozen money managers who all told Bloomberg News they expect to maintain or raise their exposure to precious metals in the coming 12 months. So why exactly are they so bullish? Let's keep reading. So bullion has stumbled in recent weeks in the face of multiple headwinds, from surging real yields to a stronger US dollar and the prospect of US rates staying high for longer. Now, what do I teach you in my course, everyone? Link in the description, that when the dollar goes up and when interest rates go up, in the short term, that's bad for gold. But once the lag effects kick in and the economy heads into a recession and the central banks start cutting interest rates, that's when you see gold skyrocket. The survey of investors from sovereign wealth managers to hedge funds offered some modest optimism for the price prospects in 2024, and I agree as well. I think they'll cut interest rates in 2024, and that's when we'll see gold take off as the dollar gets devalued. None of the respondents said they would cut their exposure to gold in the immediate 12 months, and 5 of them said they expected to boost their allocation. More than 2/3 of them see prices rising, and 5 expect a clear all-time high. There's still obvious uncertainty around when the Federal Reserve will end the bank's tightening cycle, which would be an important positive for non-interest-bearing gold. Now, global central banks continue to grapple with stubborn inflation, and the US labor market has remained surprisingly resilient in the face of aggressive monetary tightening. While everyone with the latest earnings reports from a lot of retailers, I think that's all about to change. They do anticipate there's pent-up gold demand from investors waiting for Fed to finish. That's a positive setup from our perspective. He sees gold reaching a record $2,250 an ounce in the time period. Well, everyone, I think if the US does enter an official recession, even though I believe we are in one right now, they keep on manipulating the data, if we do enter an official recession in 2024, and if the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates to zero and starts a money printer again, we could easily see gold hit $3,000 an ounce. The continued appetite for gold points to lingering worries about geopolitical tensions. And we just got this news with BRICS, and if they keep on adding gold to their reserves, we're going to see gold skyrocket, and macroeconomic uncertainties. For example, simmering tensions between the US and China, war in Ukraine, or what's next for China's property crisis. Other positive factors for gold include continued purchases by global central banks and relatively strong retail demand in emerging markets. So that's exactly right, everyone. I think this will be the perfect storm for gold in 2024. We'll see geopolitical tensions rise. We'll see a lot of global central banks add to their reserves, and we're going to see an economic crisis and a recession. Interest rates will be cut. They're going to do the same thing they've done again and again and again. It never works, but they will devalue the currency, and we're going to see gold surge. Meanwhile, a breakdown in the correlation between equities and bonds, a cornerstone of the popular 60-40 investment strategy, is also helping to make the case for the metal due to its ability to diversify your portfolio. Now, I completely agree. You don't want to be all in one asset. You don't want to be all in bonds, cryptocurrency, even gold. You don't want to be all in gold, silver. You need to diversify, and gold is a great way to do that. So everyone, I know what you're thinking. Well, okay, what does all this mean in simple terms? Well, what this simply means is, everyone, if these 6 new nations join BRICS and the 20 other nations that applied to join BRICS, if they all officially join, well, it's going to be game over for the West and the G7 nations. This could potentially lead to a new world war, which I definitely hope doesn't happen. But there's going to be conflicts. We simply can't avoid it. So you're definitely going to want to prepare right now, because things are going to get very volatile. We already see the situation between the US and China escalating. They're siding with Russia. We're going to see Iran join BRICS. They definitely do not like the US. So you're definitely going to want to get maybe another passport. If you need to get out of the country, you're definitely going to want to have all your preparation items in check, and you want to have some gold in your portfolio to protect yourself against economic calamity. But everyone, what do you think about this situation? Let me know down below. Now, for my loyal viewers and subscribers still watching, you're awesome. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.